Welcome back to my channel. This episode I'm going to look at sequential gear changes on the Hewland FTR / JFR gearbox. I've got a JFR gearbox here and I'm going to run through how the system actually works. So right, let's get cracking here. I want to explain first this mechanism here. This is where the lever comes in, or if you're on a pneumatic, the actuator comes in. One of the biggest issues we have had with slow gear changes is that people put a nice brand new rod end into this bolt, and if you have a brand new rod end and the spherical joint in it is very stiff, that can really slow the gear change up. So I recommend that the ball joint that you put in, whatever rod end rose joint you use, is that it actually more or less spins quite freely, and that will actually give you a so much better gear change. Okay, next up, how it actually works. So as you can see, when I'm going up the box like this, this lever actuates a rack, and that rack manages to turn the sideways motion into a rotary motion. I'll show you how it does all that in a minute. And then that turns the barrel and the selector forks go in and out. Now you'd have had to watch a previous video on when I do gear changes, and I've shown you on that video how the forks go in and out and it selects the gears. But in this video I'm not going to be going through that because obviously I've covered it once already. So next up, what we're going to do is strip this whole system down, and I'm going to show you what to look at, what to look for, so on and so forth. Okay, so before you actually strip the gear selection mechanism down, you actually have to strip the gearbox quite a bit. So the gear cluster has to be out, and the differential area, you have to take the side plate off and the differential off, so you can get to a hidden circlip on that, which is a bit of a beast, but I will come to that in a minute. Okay, so the first thing you have to do to strip it down is actually start here. Now again, tips for this, I'll come into how you put it back together in a minute, but underneath there is a lock nut, and the lock nut, oops, got to get the right Allen key on it. Comes off quite simply. It's a simple K-nut, and it's a 7mm K-nut, and the bolt's actually 6mm, and you need a 5mm Allen key to do it. Now there is a washer under there which should come off in a minute, and there is also a washer. I'll point with my screwdriver. There's a little washer hidden in there, and there's also another little washer hidden in there, which again will all come off. And it's very important that those washers go back in again, but I will actually show you how to do that later. And this part here is threaded, and as you can see, I'm undoing the bolt like so. Okay, so there we go, the washers all off. Next up, we're going to go inside, and if I have my camera lady to come in and film up inside the gearbox there, right up, I'll try and get a point, right up in here is what we call the pizza cutter, and that has to be taken out next. So I'll stop the video, I'll move the gearbox around so we can go vertically at it, and you can see me taking the pizza cutter out. Yep. Okay, so to take the pizza cutter out, you need a 5mm Allen key, a fairly long extension, and then it's just a case of undoing the bolt. They're Loctited in, so they can be a bit tricky to get out. Again, if you're struggling to get it out, you can put a bit of heat on the casing this side, and they do come out. Not normally too tricky. And there we go, that's the pizza cutter popped out. And this is the little assembly. I'll go a bit more into it before we put it back in and build it, but that is a pizza cutter. So now we've got to take the selector rack out of the box before we can remove the barrel. You need a pair of circlip pliers and put them into the internal circlip. Sometimes need a bit of easing out. There we go. Now there's a little cap here, and to try and get it out, this is quite a handy trick. If you just get a soft hammer, and I'll let my camera person move around to the other side. So what you do is just get a soft hammer and give this a short, sharp tap, and hopefully that will pop out. There we go. Okay, so that's got the cap out. It's all it is a cap with an O-ring around it, and we'll be changing that O-ring later. And then we come down inside. Now if you look down in here, you'll see a circlip with a washer behind it, and that's got to come out. So I'll drop it down like so, and I'll go in with a pair of circlip pliers. Now I'd normally use a pair of straight circlip pliers for this, but so you can actually see what I'm doing, I'll use a pair of, oops, there we go. So that's that circlip out. There's a spring, which I will try and get out. Whoops. There's a spring. Now you'll need a little magnet, because there's a plunger that fits down in there. Here's the plunger coming out. There's something to tell you about this plunger. These parts never ever well, I have personally never replaced one. They seem to last forever and a day, but you can actually find out some history about the box with these plungers, because when you put the plunger in, it can go in many places. And normally if a box has had quite a few rebuilds, you'll see the silver line that's just here. Yeah. Now to put that back in the same place every time is almost nigh impossible. So if somebody said, oh, the gearbox has had lots of rebuilds, and you only ever see one line in there, you've got to have some element of doubt that this has ever been out of the gearbox. Whereas if you see lots of silver lines all around this, you can tell the box has actually been maintained quite regularly. So that's a little trick just to keep up your sleeve to see how the box has been maintained. Okay, so next up we're going to come to the really tricky bit. Now we've got all this assembly out, we've got to try and get, I'll stop the video in a second so we can change it around so you can see what's going, a circlip in there, which is probably the hardest job of the lot to do. Right, so the circlip is on the end of the selector barrel just here. I have modified a pair of straight circlip pliers. I managed to heat them up here, bent them around and then cooled them down quickly, so I've got sort of about a 45-degree angle on it, because what you've got to do is, I have to get my body in the way to normally do this, is get the circlip pliers in there and open them up. So I will try. Oh, almost. Best if I move the barrel around. You might get my head in the way, I apologise, but you've got to sort of be able to see what you're doing to get the circlip in your circlip pliers in. That's one. Ah, that was lucky. When you push them out, you normally destroy the circlip, so you'll need a new circlip. And that's a 25mm circlip. It's exactly the same one as we used on the ratios for putting the locking nut on as well. So it's always worth having a little bag of 25mm circlips. Okay, so now where are we? So the rack is almost ready to come out. So what we've got to do now is, before we can take the rack out, we've got to take the barrel out. And the barrel should now just lift out like so. Okay, so this is a selector barrel. I'll chat you through a few bits on it. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention when I was doing the lever and how it operated is you can have a stop system on it. Primarily only used if you're either using a cable gear change or a bar gear change. So when you come down the box and you come down to first, Hewland's have put a stop system in there, so which normally fits in here. It's a spring and a plunger. It comes down and it activates here. So when you're going up and down the box, normally it rotates here, and when you get to sixth gear, it stops there. And then when you come back down to try and get into neutral, you have to pull a separate cable to get you into neutral, and then you have to pull it again to get it into reverse gear. So that's what these knobs here on the barrel are for. This little knob here, this is for, it sits just above this point here, and that's if you want a neutral light. So on your dashboard, if you want a little neutral light, I think it's actually off a Honda Goldwing that you can screw into there, a little light, and it presses the lever up and turns your light on. A couple other bits about the barrel. Here you'll see a little hole, yeah, and that's in the groove where third and fourth gear go, but it actually actuates. If you put a bolt in there, it turns this barrel in from being a 6-speed barrel into a 5-speed. Acts as an automatic stops there, and it means for some regulations, like in the UK, you've got Sports 2000. If you wanted to use a 6-speed but turn it into a 5-speed, that's quite an easy way of turning it into a 5-speed gearbox. And then on the end here, you've got this little aluminium piece with a slot in it. That's for your potentiometer, so you can work out what gear you're in if you've got an electric display on your dashboard or in your data log or wherever it might be. On the end here, we've got pins, and I'll show you what they do in a second when I get the rack out. Okay, so now I can take the rack out. Rack out comes out fairly straightforward, especially on a used one. And here we have the rack. And now I can explain exactly what happens. I'll try and move it around for the camera. There we go. So you've got this little pawl here that comes down and grabs, lifts one way, and then going back it does exactly the same thing. And that's how you change it from a sideways movement into a rotary movement. Quite clever. You do have to keep an eye on these pins. These are actually very nice, but you do get some if they start seeing signs of wear. They have been known to break. Change them is a bit of an art, and it's something I won't go into in this video. Maybe I'll do a separate video if someone wants to know. I can sort something out. But yeah, that's quite difficult to get these pins out. Okay, well that's the barrel. And now we'll go back to the rack. It's got a spring on here which actually comes off quite easy. Just depress that, take the circlip off. I won't do this for this video, but that's dead easy to take out. And you've got a little ratchety mechanism here, and on the end we've got a lip of what we call a quad ring, and that is actually quite badly worn, and that needs changing. That would mean that the casing would leak. On some of the very later models, another box is very much like the FTR as the F3B gearbox. They've actually put an oil seal in here, so you don't just rely on the quad ring, but even if it does leak, it only weeps very, very slightly, so you're not going to lose all your oil out there. But yeah, on a job like this, regular maintenance, what I would suggest you do is change the spring, change the seal. You've got a spring here we're going to change, and also the spring that activates the pizza cutter. So that is everything now fully stripped down. What I'll do is I'll stop it now, and then I'll start on the how you put it back together again. Okay, so changing this little what's called quad ring. It's fairly simple. If you get yourself a lever, go under, simple motion, that comes off, and getting the new one in, I tend to put it over that part first, push it on like so, and then carefully lever this up and push it in and make sure it's nicely down. And as you can see, that's got quite nice pronounced lips on it, whereas if you look at the two, you can see that's really quite flat. So that's that quad ring changed, and now on this little stopper, got to do exactly the same thing. Again, fairly straightforward really, just take the O-ring off and pop the new O-ring on. Okay, so that's the O-ring replacement. Now we're going to start the putting the whole system back together again. So the first thing that goes in is your rack. Now, because we've got a new quad ring on there, you need a bit of oil, and the whole thing should be oiled. One thing I haven't mentioned is there is two different types of spring that go on this rack. There's the heavy duty one and there's the lightweight one, and this is the reason I'm not changing this, because this is the heavy duty one. It's quite hard to push down. Again, can be used. I'm not a great lover of them. They work. They put a lot of extra load on things, for a bit unnecessary. I tend to like the lighter spring, and the lighter spring you can literally push down with your hands, where this one you can sort of push it down, but it's quite heavy. It comes down to manufacturer's choice, and this manufacturer wanted the harder spring on. So right, well, as you come to fit your rack in the gearbox, one thing that I have to ask Karen to come down and check here is when you put it in, you got to be a bit careful of your brand new quad ring you put in. So I'm working a bit cack-handed, so give it a light tap in here. Now as it comes across here, it's very easy to catch the quad ring down here. So what you have to do is push it in slowly, and then just help the quad ring down the bottom go in, otherwise you'll damage it. There we go, that's just got in. So that's got the quad ring in. Okay, so the next job is actually the pizza cutter. Now I'm going to put a new spring on this, and we're going to have to put this bolt in and Loctite it. So I'm going to stop the video so I can get the bolt cleaned and get the spring ready to put in, and then clean also down in the thread down in there so the Loctite sticks. Okay, so I've got myself a kit of parts together: new spring, new spring, old spring, and the same with the circlips. I've got 3 new circlips, so I'll take all the old stuff out of the way, and now I'll start concentrating on how we're going to build the pizza cutter up. So I'll put the spring on, then the pizza cutter goes down like so, and then the little ear there goes into that slot, and I've cleaned this bolt that goes down through there, and then we put a dab of Loctite on it. Now I use quite an aggressive Loctite because you really don't want this bolt coming out, so I use a 270 Loctite. Okay, so it's makes life, whoops. Okay, and now we want a good old 6mm. Okay. Now as you come down, there's a little tag. You'll see a little metal dowel down in the bottom of the gearbox casing, and I'll point it out once I've screwed this down. You can see it's just got to the left hand side of it, and that's where you want the dowel to go. Okay, if you look, you can probably see a bit better now. Now we've got to torque that up. Okay, and it's the same as when I was doing the diff. It's 11 Newton meters, which is about 8 foot-pounds. Torqued up. Now once you've got it torqued up, don't think that's it, because what you've got to do is get a screwdriver, and you're going to make sure that the pizza cutter actually moves like so, and you can see it's moving quite freely. If it doesn't, and it occasionally does, you sometimes have to take a little, put it on a grinder and grind a little bit off. Not very often it happens, but it can happen. But you've always got to make sure that that is very easily moving, otherwise it'll slow your gear change down absolutely dramatically. Okay, so next up we've got to put the barrel in, and this is a bit where you need a special tool, and Hewland don't even make the special tool. It's one that I've made. It makes life so much easier. It's basically any old quarter socket with 2 ears, or a lot of it cut off, and you'll see why in a second when I come to put the barrel in. So we're going to do that now. But before we put the barrel in, you've got to make sure inside the gearbox here that your little pull is actually down. It's not down like that, it's up, pushed out the way. Okay, so now this is where, if Karen stays there, moves that way a little bit. That's cool. I will try and show you what we do. So this socket now goes over the top of the pizza cutter like so, and you can then twist the pizza cutter out of the way. Yeah, a bit difficult to film and do this at the same time. There's not a lot of room here, and as you can see, that's holding out the way. Then the pizza cutter goes up and is within the pins. Okay, so we've got the horrible job. We've got to put the new 25mm circlip onto the barrel, like down like that. But it's going to be almost impossible for me to show you, because where I've got to stand to get it on, because you've got to get your body position right, and you've got to use your fingers coming across there, I'm going to block the video out. So I'll have a go at that. Karen can keep on filming, but I guarantee you probably won't see a lot. And there we go. If you look down there now, you should be able to see the circlip is on. A little video of that. As you can see, we've got the I've got the circlip on. Okay, next up we're going to put the plunger assembly in. I have been lightly oiling everything, but just down there before you put the plunger in, put some oil in. That easily drops. Some people put this around the wrong way, which is a bit dumb. It's fairly obvious that's got to go down that direction, like so. Put your brand new spring in. Now next up is a washer. Now it's very important that this washer is bang on a millimetre thick. Don't use a thinner one because they buckle. Don't use the thicker one because it actually stops the gear change. So that washer that you put in there has got to be no more than 1 millimetre. I mean, normally the washer that comes out, it's been working fine. It's quite good to use the same one again. Again, for filming purposes, I use some 45-degree pliers to put this in. Sometimes it's better if you rest it on the top. My fingers are probably getting in the way here, but again, there's another little tip here which I shall show you. Whoops. Okay, we've changed position, so hopefully you guys can see a bit easier what's going on. Right, so I started putting the circle in. Now the tip I use here is I've got a socket which I shall just get, and this socket luckily fits right inside of there, so we get the circlip in the right place. It's a long way down. You just gradually tap the socket until the circlip picks up the groove. So just a case of being very careful, gradually tapping it down. I think that's just picked it up. Yeah. So if you look down there now, and I double check is I get a screwdriver and I push down on the washer, and the washer should bang up, as you can see, onto the circlip, so you know that that circlip is actually in properly. Okay, so last bit is to put your cap on. Again, just a touch of oil around the new O-ring. I always like to put it with the Hewland logo at the top, but that's just a bit of OCD by me. That pushes down. You have to be careful that the barrel outside the rack doesn't hit on the other side of the bench. Now getting these in, again, they're not too bad to put in. You just got to make sure they're down properly. Yeah, as you see, that's not down properly. And you heard the snap, so that's down. Okay, the last little job we've got to do is put the actual lever on the outside of the box. So I shall bring the lever over and the bolts. Sorry, I'm getting in the way of the camera. I'll put the bits in the wrong place for you. Okay, so I've actually got a washer still stuck in the top. So you put your lever in, and then you put your first washer in, which should fairly easily be picked up and down through the hole. Okay, now the tricky washer to put in is the lower one, which I always tend to try and get a screwdriver up into the hole, through the hole where it's gone, and pick up on the washer. Can be a bit fiddly, this. Right, I picked it up. Again, back to it's a 5mm Allen key. Now, this doesn't need any torquing, and it's quite important not to over tighten this, because if you over tighten this, again, it'll make your gear linkage beyond incredibly slow. So the way to check it is, as you can see, we've got some vertical movement, and as I do this up, the slop in that is gradually deteriorating. Oh, not deteriorating, wrong word. It's gradually becoming less. I can show you what happens if you go too far. In fact, I'll do that now. I've really wound that in. You can hardly move it. Whereas you just come back a bit, this is freed up and it goes up and down the box nicely. Okay. Once you've set that and you're happy with it, you then put your jam nut underneath so that bolt does not come loose and it stays at the same setting. Okay, so that now concludes the mechanism. It's always worth checking, and again, as I said in the previous video, always make sure that you leave it back in neutral. Okay, so to make sure the gearbox is in neutral, I've taken this plug out, and as you can see, as I previously explained, this is where the stopper for the if you're using a cable or a lever for the gear change, it would come up and go against here. So if you can see the blank piece here, and then the next step, that's actually still in first gear. So what you've got to do is, I'll try and move this around without moving anything else, is go down a step. So as you can see, now that is the neutral position you want to be in. So you'd have had to move the plunger here up, and this is the neutral position. The next one there, that's for reverse. I hope you found this video informative. If you want any more pictures or diagrams, you can go on to our Mark Bay Racing website, mbr.com, and that's got some exploded views of the FTR and JFR gearbox. Although the business is closed down, we're still keeping our website running because people find that part of our website quite useful. Next up, I'm going to be doing a different gearbox. Hopefully it's going to be on the LD gearbox. It's going to come out in a couple of weeks' time, and may well be in a different venue. So look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and the old, please like and subscribe.